was 18 when I got the acceptance letter to my dream architecture program. I spent 4 years of high school sacrificing everything for this moment. I stayed up till 3 perfecting my portfolio. I practically floated into the kitchen to show my parents. Through all those late nights, I was driven by one comforting promise. My college fund. They drilled its importance into my head. Every birthday check and summer job dollar went straight to my mom. She was the financial warden of our house, aggressively frugal. She constantly reminded me of her sacrifices for my education. She'd take my cash, march to the bank, and say it was safely growing in a high-yield account. I trusted her completely, so I fully expected tears of joy. Instead, this sudden, heavy silence fell over the room. It felt like a physical weight. My dad looked down at his hands. My mom let out this perfectly timed, trembling sigh. She reached across the table to hold my hand. Then she looked me dead in the eye and told me it was gone. All of it. The market had taken a horrific downturn. She claimed a freak economic anomaly wiped out my entire college savings in weeks. She said she'd spent nights crying. At that moment, I wasn't even angry. I just felt crushed. Incredibly, my first instinct was to comfort her. I walked around the table and hugged my mom, saying it wasn't her fault. I felt terrible for the guilt they were carrying. Because of the timing, I had to defer my enrollment. There was no way to secure last-minute loans. I watched my friends leave for dorms while I unpacked in my childhood bedroom. I got a job at a local diner, working double shifts to save from scratch. I smelled like fryer grease for a year. I worked 60 hours a week, quietly mourning my lost life. As the months dragged on, the initial shock kinda wore off. But this quiet, nagging unease started creeping in. Things in our house just weren't adding up. If we had just lost everything, you'd think we'd be tightening our belts. Instead, my mom took early retirement. She spent all day glued to her tablet in the sunroom. She claimed she was just playing digital puzzle games to keep her mind sharp. But the way she held it was super unnerving. Whenever I walked in, she'd flinch and aggressively tap the screen black. Her moods were completely all over the place. Some days she'd be practically singing while making dinner. She'd even offer to buy me expensive stuff I didn't ask for. Other days, she'd plunge into this dark, irritable depression. She'd snap at me and my dad over the smallest things. She constantly complained about how ungrateful we were. Then there was the mail. She became totally obsessed with it. She'd wait by the window to grab the letters before my dad or I could even see them. One afternoon, she was in the shower, so I brought the mail inside. There were these 3 thick, unmarked envelopes addressed to her. No return address, just some out-of-state P.O. box. When she saw them on the counter, she snatched them up so fast she almost tore the paper. Her face flushed with this ugly, panicked anger. She actually started screaming at me for snooping. The real turning point came in February. The financial aid office at my dream school emailed me a lifeline. I could appeal for emergency grants if I had proof of the market crash. It felt like an absolute miracle. I waited until after dinner to bring it up. I sat down at the table and told her this was our chance to finally fix things. I asked her for the bank statements so I could send them to the school. She just froze. The tapping stopped, and she stared at that blank screen. Then she told me, completely flatly, that she didn't have them. I honestly didn't get it. I told her the bank would have sent statements, or at least some tax forms. I figured we could just log in online and print the history right there. Instantly, she just started shouting at me. She claimed the account was closed, the records were purged, and her accountant handled it all. Going from zero to absolute rage that fast, it was terrifying. She called me selfish for dragging up her tongue. She yelled that I was interrogating her in her own house, that I didn't trust her. Oh, the whole room just felt like it was suffocating. My dad rushed in to see what the yelling was about. The second he walked in, she flipped a switch and played the victim. She started crying these fake tears, telling him I was harassing her. My dad, always the peacemaker, just put his hand on my shoulder. He looked so tired. He quietly asked me to drop it, whispering that it was just too painful for her. I went up to my room feeling physically sick. My mind was racing because none of it made sense. Banks don't just delete records of a $50,000 account. Then it hit me. I had never actually seen a single piece of paper proving this crash. The next morning, I called the credit union where the fund was opened. The rep looked up my social and sounded super confused. She told me the account wasn't closed at all. And since I was 18, I had full legal rights to the history. I didn't say a word to my parents. I just finished my morning shift at the diner on total autopilot. As soon as I clocked out, I changed out of my uniform in the bathroom. I was going to get answers. I drove straight to the credit union and walked right in. I sat down at the desk of a personal banker named Sarah. I handed her my ID and asked for the complete transaction history for the last 4 years. Every single line. Sarah clicked her mouse, her eyes scanning the screen. I watched her face. I watched the pleasant, professional smile slowly fade, replaced by a look of deep, uncomfortable pity. She looked at me, then back at the screen. She gently asked if I was aware of the recent activity on the account. I told her I thought it was lost in a market crash. Sarah let out a soft, sad sigh. She looked me in the eye and said, very quietly, "Sweetheart, this account has never been tied to the stock market. It's a standard savings account." She turned to her printer. The machine whirred to life, spitting out page after page after page. She stapled the thick stack of papers together and slid them across the desk to me. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot, the engine off. The winter cold seeped through the windows. The balance 4 years ago was just over $52,000. I looked at the transaction lines. There were no stock purchases, no mutual fund fees, and no sudden, catastrophic drop. Instead, it was a slow, methodical, agonizing bleed. I looked at the merchant names attached to the wire transfers. They weren't investment firms. They were names like Grand Palace Digital, Apex VIP Lounge, and Velocity Entertainment. I pulled out my phone and searched the names. One after another, the search results painted a horrifying picture. They were offshore, high-stakes online gambling portals and digital casinos. My mother hadn't lost my future in a tragic economic downturn. She had sat in our sunroom, tapping away on her tablet. She systematically gambled away my entire education on digital slot machines. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, that I couldn't even cry. I felt a cold, hard clarity wash over me. By the time she claimed the market crashed, the balance was $14. I drove home feeling completely detached from everything. I didn't rush. I didn't speed. I just drove. All that grief was gone, replaced by this cold, mechanical focus. I walked through the front door into this sickeningly normal domestic scene. I could hear the TV going in the living room where my dad was chilling. And from the kitchen, just the steady chop of a knife on a cutting board. I stepped into the kitchen and there she was, just casually chopping veggies for dinner. She was actually humming to herself, totally oblivious. And right next to her cutting board was that damn tablet. I didn't say a word to let her know I was there. I just walked straight up to the island, gripping those bank statements. Every step felt so heavy and deliberate. I didn't even break my stride. I just raised that thick stack of papers and dropped them right over her cutting board. They hit the wood with this heavy, satisfying smack. She jumped, totally startled by the noise. She looked down at the papers, and I watched all the color just drain right out of her face. She knew exactly what they were the second she saw that bank logo. The smack of the papers brought my dad out of the living room. He walked in, wiping his hands on a towel, looking super confused. He just looked back and forth between us, asking what was going on. I didn't take my eyes off my mom when I answered him. My voice was dangerously calm. I just told him, it's the market crash. I said, I finally found the records for the financial aid office. My dad walked over and picked up the first page. He looked at the balance, then squinted as he scanned down the list of withdrawals. He frowned, trying to make sense of it, asking what an Apex VIP lounge was. Instead of crumbling with guilt, my mom went straight into manipulation mode. She slammed her knife down onto the counter so hard it rattled. Then she just went on the offensive, screaming that I had no right to go behind her back. She didn't even pause to take a breath. She just kept screaming about how much pressure she was under. She actually said she sacrificed her whole life for me and that she deserved an outlet. Then the excuses got even more delusional. She swore she was trying to double the money for me, like she had some kind of foolproof system. She really believed she was just one big win away from getting it all back. When she saw I wasn't buying it, she turned right to my dad. She started crying, saying she did it for us because we didn't have enough for retirement. Then she pointed right at me, calling me an ungrateful brat for tearing the family apart over a mistake. I watched my dad completely shatter right in front of me. You could see the exact second it hit him. The woman he married hadn't just stolen my future, she'd been lying to his face every single day. He had actually comforted her while she cried those fake tears. He just stared at her like she was a total stranger. His whole marriage just broke apart in an instant. He finally saw her for what she really was. An addict who would rather destroy her own kid than admit she had a problem. He didn't even yell. He just let go of the bank statements. The papers scattered all over the kitchen floor. The silence in that room was absolutely deafening. He didn't give her a chance to explain. He just turned around and walked right out of the kitchen. He left her standing there by the island. Her mouth was just hanging open, all her little excuses dying in her throat. Once he was gone, she turned all that venom right back on me. She told me I was the one tearing the family apart. She called me cruel and vindictive. She actually said she'd never forgive me for humiliating her. I didn't even raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just looked at the woman who took my diner paychecks while pretending to protect my future. All I felt was this cold, hard clarity. I told her she didn't make a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. I said, you made thousands of individual choices to steal from me. You watched me give up my dream, and you let me comfort you. You're not a victim. I didn't even wait around for her to finish yelling. I just turned my back, walked upstairs to my room, and dragged my old suitcases out of the closet. I threw them on the bed, my hands still kind of shaking from the adrenaline. I didn't bother packing everything I owned. I just grabbed the essentials, enough clothes to get by, my laptop, and my portfolio. I was packing just enough to get out of there. I promised myself I'd never sleep under that roof again. About an hour later, my dad pushed open my door. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 60 minutes. He just sat down heavy on the edge of my bed, looked at my bags, and started crying. He kept apologizing, saying he failed me by blindly trusting her with the money. Then he actually begged me not to leave. He was pleading, saying we could fix it, that she was sick, that we were still a family. I sat down next to him and gave him a huge hug. I told him I loved him, and I really did forgive him for not knowing. But I looked right at him and said I was still leaving. That's when I realized something brutal about boundaries. They aren't just to protect you from the person hurting you. They're to protect you from the people who enable it just to keep the peace. He wasn't gonna leave her. He was gonna stay and manage her mess. He'd want me to play long and pretend we could all heal together. I just couldn't do it. I refused to let her sickness be the anchor that drowned my life. So I zipped up my bags, walked out the door, and left that night. For the next 2 months, I slept on a friend's lumpy couch. It was uncomfortable and honestly kind of humiliating, but it was the first time in years I actually felt safe. I woke up knowing nobody was lying to me. Once I got settled, I took those bank statements straight to the financial aid office. I sat across from this totally stunned counselor and explained everything. I laid out the proof, and I officially filed for independence to legally cut ties with my parents. It was a brutal process. I had to prove my own family financially abandoned me. To get the loans I needed, I had to take on a terrifying amount of debt. I signed papers knowing I'd be paying for my education for the next 20 years. Over the next few months, she tried reaching out a few times. She'd send these long, rambling texts. One minute, she's blaming me for abandoning her. The next, she's demanding we go to family therapy. Not once did she offer to pay me back. I realized keeping that door open was just inviting more poison in. So I didn't reply. I just blocked her number, blocked her socials, and completely cut her off. I permanently removed her access to my life. It's been 6 years since that night in the kitchen. I survived the debt, the stress, all those sleepless nights. And I finally graduated from that architecture program. I walked across that stage and looked out into the crowd. My dad was there. He was sitting all by himself in the back row, just smiling and crying at the same time. My mother wasn't there. People sometimes ask if I regret cutting her out. They'll say, "But she's your mom," or tell me I should be more forgiving. They don't get that forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone destroy you again. You can forgive someone from a safe distance. I still pay my student loans every single month. It's a heavy burden. Sometimes I look at that balance and feel a flash of the old anger. It's a monthly reminder of what she took. But then I take a breath and look around. I look at the peace in my home. I look at the quiet confidence I have in my own survival. The anger just doesn't control me anymore. I look at the career I built from absolutely nothing. Every piece of my success was built by my own hands. I didn't just lose a college fund. I lost the illusion of who my mother was. But in the process, I found out exactly who I am. I learned that the people demanding your trust usually deserve it the least. and you can't save someone who's using you as a shield. When someone tells you your future is gone, you don't have to believe them. You can walk out the door, take the hit, and build it yourself. It might be harder, but when you get there, no one can ever take it away. I didn't just lose a college fund. I lost the entire illusion of who my mother was. It's a tough pill to swallow when your protector becomes your thief. But honestly, letting go of that lie was my first real step toward freedom. But in the process of losing all that, I found out exactly who I am. I found this crazy resilience I never even knew I had. I realized I could stand on my own 2 feet, even when the ground completely vanished. I learned a really harsh lesson about trust. The people who demand your absolute, unquestioning trust are usually the ones who deserve it the least. Real trust is earned through actions, not demanded through guilt trips. I also learned you can't save someone who's actively trying to use you as a human shield. You can't fix an addiction for someone else, especially when they won't even admit it. Sometimes the only way to survive is just to walk away. Most importantly, I learned that when someone tries to tell you your future is gone, you don't have to believe them. They don't get to write the end of your story. You've got to take the pen back. You can walk out the door, take the hit, and just build it yourself. It takes an unbelievable amount of courage to start over from zero. But every brick you lay is yours, and every foundation you pour is rock solid. It might be harder. You might have to work twice as long and sacrifice twice as much as everyone else. There are going to be nights where you just want to give up, where the weight of it all feels way too heavy. It might take longer. Your timeline might not look like your friends' timelines, and honestly, that's okay. The delay doesn't mean denial. It just means you're building something that's actually meant to last. But when you finally get there, no one can ever look you in the eye and claim they gave it to you. You don't owe your success to anyone's charity or anyone's strings. You earned every single piece of it, and no one can ever take it away. The life I have now is mine, built on truth and hard work. The betrayal almost broke me, but instead, it made me the architect of my own destiny. I still pay those student loans every single month. It's a heavy burden, and yeah, sometimes I look at that balance and feel a quick flash of that old anger. But then I just look around at my life. I look at the quiet peace in my own home, and that anger just kind of fades away. I look at the career I built from absolutely nothing. Every wall, every blueprint, every late night, I made this happen. I didn't just lose a college fund back then. I lost the entire illusion of who my mother was and what my family was supposed to be. But honestly, in the process of losing all that, I finally found out exactly who I am. I found this quiet confidence in my own survival. I learned that the people who demand your absolute trust are usually the ones who deserve it the least. You gotta earn that. I learned you can't save someone who's actively trying to use you as a shield. You just have to step out of the way. Most importantly, I learned that when someone looks you in the eye and tells you your future is gone, you really don't have to believe them. You can walk right out that door, take the hit, and build it yourself. It's going to be harder, and it's going to take longer, but you can do it. And when you finally get there, no one can ever claim they gave it to you. And absolutely no one can ever take it away.